Vice President Maybelline was making the rounds, attempting to defend his boss and the chairman of the FCC with a new fairy tale even a 5-year-old wouldn't believe.
Celebrities are rallying to his cause, saying this is a First Amendment assault being carried out by the FCC, Brendan Carr, and by the President of the United States himself. And to that, you say?
Well, there are two things. First of all, I'd like them to tell me exactly what Brendan Carr did to have Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air, because number one, he is currently on the air, and to the extent that he isn't in certain stations, it's because he's not funny and because his ratings aren't very good.
I have some good news for you, J-Dog. We're back on all this.
The cameras were rolling, the audience was ready, and there was a noticeable silence in the room as Jimmy Kimmel walked into the spotlight. You could tell he already knew exactly where he wanted to take the conversation. His focus was J.D. Vance, and a claim Vance had recently made during an appearance on Fox News, and it was clear Kimmel was about to dive straight into it.
First of all, Kimmel was taken off the air because he had low ratings, because the late-night talk show host model was not doing particularly well, and let's be honest, because he had become so politically unhinged that I think he wasn't particularly funny. Now, the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, put out a couple of tweets, but the government took no action. We did literally nothing to try to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air. We believe in free speech. We also believe in the right of a television station or a network to cancel somebody because of low ratings. And I think it's a little bit rich. The second point I make, Rashad, is it's a little bit rich for people to say that somehow we're engaged in censorship when literally every day, including yesterday, we found out that Google and YouTube were censoring information at the height of COVID at the direction of the Biden administration. So if we're looking for real sources of the government driving censorship, we should be looking at the policies of the Biden administration. We absolutely reject censorship in the Trump administration. We don't want to prevent anybody from speaking their mind, but if a TV station wants to cancel a guy because he's not funny, that's...
But this story was about much more than a joke that got a big laugh from the audience. Behind the humor was a response based on real events, not rumors, guesses, or political spin. Kimmel wasn't throwing around accusations or making assumptions about what happened. He pointed to facts that anyone could check for themselves. By the time he finally addressed the controversy on air, his show had already been restored by both Nexstar and Sinclair, two of the biggest station groups that had previously stopped airing it. To understand why that mattered, you have to look at how everything started. The controversy began when Kimmel was taken off the air for 6 days after a monologue that triggered a wave of backlash online. Even though Disney later brought him back, several affiliate stations kept the show off their schedules well after the official suspension had ended. That extended absence became a major part of the story and played a big role in everything that happened afterwards.
Your bullshit. Go on.
There's something else that's important here, Laura, which is that these broadcast companies, ABC, NBC, CBS, they enjoy the public airwaves because they serve the public interest. So I actually think that we should be having a conversation about whether these companies are serving the public interest. That's actually totally separate from the Jimmy Kimmel issue because nothing happened to him. He's currently on the air, and to the extent that he's not, it's because advertisers don't like him because his ratings aren't very good.
My ratings aren't very good. Last time I checked, your ratings were somewhere between a hair in your salad and chlamydia. In 3.5 years, I'm not the one who's going to be doing mascara tutorials on YouTube. How did we wind up with a president and a vice president who wear more makeup than Kylie Jenner and Lady Gaga combined? The President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke. He was somehow able to squeeze Colbert out of CBS. Then he turned his sights on me, and now he's openly rooting for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and the hundreds of Americans who work for their shows who don't.
I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him. Terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible.
Look, I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
I didn't know you meant that.
As the controversy kept unfolding, Donald Trump openly celebrated what was happening, while J.D. Vance pointed to it as evidence that Jimmy Kimmel had lost his audience. For a while, that story seemed to catch on and a lot of people believed it. But it didn't take long for the facts to paint a very different picture. Sinclair eventually reversed its decision and brought the show back, with Nexstar following soon after. Once viewers across the country could watch the program again and live audiences kept filling theaters for Kimmel's latest shows, claims that his audience was disappearing became much harder to defend. Kimmel saw the moment and turned the entire controversy into comedy. What started as a debate over a temporary suspension quickly grew into something much bigger. It became a wider conversation about how the controversy unfolded, who was controlling the narrative, and whether people were really getting the full story.
It's been overwhelming. I've heard from a lot of people over the last 6 days. I've heard from all the people in the world over the last 6 days. Everyone I have ever met has reached out 10 or 11 times. Weird characters from my past are the guy who fired me from my first radio job in Seattle, where we are not airing tonight, by the way. Sorry, Seattle. His name is Larry. In 1989, Larry tried to force me to do a bit called Jokes for Donuts, where people would call in with a joke and I would give them donuts. I refused to do it, and then I made a lot of fun of Larry for suggesting it, and eventually Larry fired me, and I had to move back in with my parents. But even he wrote in to cheer me up. Thank you, Larry, and I want to thank everyone.
Everything that happened next only made Kimmel's position even stronger. When he returned, the show pulled in some of its biggest audience numbers in years, and even after the initial buzz died down, viewership stayed well above where it had been before the suspension. That's not what you'd expect from a show that's supposedly losing its audience. While J.D. Vance kept repeating his version of the story, Kimmel had something much harder to argue with: the results. The numbers spoke for themselves. One side leaned on political talking points, while the other pointed to ratings, expanded station coverage, and an audience that continued to show up. As political figures tried to downplay the controversy and its impact, Kimmel kept shifting the focus to the bigger story unfolding behind the scenes, raising questions that many critics felt deserved a much closer look.
All week to list all of them, but some that I do especially want to mention are my fellow late night talk show hosts, my friend Stephen Colbert, who's found himself in this predicament, my friends Jon Stewart, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, John Oliver, Conan O'Brien, James Corden, Arsenio, Kathy, Wanda, Chelsea, even Jay. Sometimes I wonder in what world is the vice president of the United States calling into a giant tooth podcast host to badmouth me and the people who watch this show.
There are these judges. Judge Boasberg comes to mind. Lots of judges who are trying to basically say the president can't exercise the powers of...
As the controversy continued to grow, it started drawing attention from lawmakers and people across the media industry, adding another layer to the story. FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr later clarified that he had never threatened anyone's broadcast licenses and had only raised concerns about possible distortion. Even with that clarification, though, many observers were less focused on those individual comments and more interested in the overall chain of events. First, the show was taken off the air. Then the public reaction around the controversy kept building. Disney eventually brought Kimmel back, and over time affiliate stations began restoring the program as well. By the time he returned to the spotlight, Kimmel had already turned that entire experience into material for his monologue. That's why the debate was never just about ratings or audience numbers. At its heart, it raised bigger questions about influence, public pressure, and what was happening behind the scenes to shape the narrative and manage the fallout.
He really is running the country like it's one of his businesses. He said he would. Just to give you some perspective, the government being shut down is even worse than when it's up and running. Republicans would like you to believe that Democrats shut the government down, but the bill they wanted the Democrats to sign would knock out about 15 million Americans from health insurance. If this bill passes, your health insurance premiums could go up 75%, so there was no way the Democrats could vote for it. It's like like going to dinner and the waiter says, you must order lasagna. The chef made it today. And a bunch of you are going to get food poisoning from it. But if you don't eat it, you've ruined the meal. That's the Garfield version of what's going on.
When Jimmy Kimmel took the stage in Brooklyn, he didn't stop after delivering one memorable punchline. He kept the energy going, rolling from one joke to the next throughout the entire segment. The now well-known Vice President Maybelline joke was just the starting point. From there, Kimmel took aim at what he described as the administration's focus on image and appearance, joking that he'd somehow managed to make it through most of his life without ever needing mascara tutorials. But the comedy soon shifted towards something more serious. He joked about the release of files connected to Amelia Earhart while suggesting that other controversies deserved far more public attention. Underneath the laughter was a bigger message. Critics argued that the joke pointed to a familiar pattern, where attention is often pulled away from uncomfortable issues and redirected towards safer, less politically risky distractions. By blending humor with criticism, Kimmel turned a string of jokes into a broader commentary on how public narratives are created and shaped.
Silver lining to the shutdown, according to their official website, during the shutdown, our friends at the FCC will cease their response to consumer complaint and inquiry phone lines, which I'm not a lawyer, but I think means we can now say whatever we want on TV, right? To being a direct violation of the First Amendment is not a particularly intelligent threat to make in public. Ted Cruz said he sounded like a mafioso. Although, I don't know, if you want to hear a mob boss make a threat like that, you have to hide a microphone in a deli and park outside in a van with a tape recorder all night long. This genius said it on a podcast. Brendan Carr is the most embarrassing car Republicans have embraced since this.
How long you worked here?
A year.
Okay.
Donut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which donut, though?
Just whatever makes sense. No pickles. Hold the pickles.
Oh, well, no, I can get that for you.
One of the biggest reasons Jimmy Kimmel's comedy connects with so many people is his ability to point out contradictions that audiences have already noticed for themselves. Time after time, he focuses on moments where public messaging seems completely disconnected from reality. In this case, he drew attention to the gap between anti-elite political rhetoric and the images of wealth, privilege, and luxury, using humor to highlight a contrast that many viewers felt was impossible to ignore.
Meddling where they shouldn't under many administrations, but it wasn't always like this. There was an FCC commissioner back in 2022 who worked under Joe Biden who was spot on. He wrote, "President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship." You know who wrote that? FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr here. Our freedom to speak is what they admire most about this country. And that's something I'm embarrassed to say I took for granted until they pulled my friend Stephen off the air and tried to coerce the affiliates who run our show in the cities that you live in to take my show off the air. That's not legal. That's not American. That is un-American, and it is so dangerous.
The audience's reaction wasn't an accident. People laughed because they already understood the context behind the joke and had watched the controversy unfold in real time. That's what made the punchline land so well. It wasn't just a funny line, it was directly connected to events viewers were already familiar with. But the story didn't end there. As the debate continued, J.D. Vance reportedly continued arguing that Kimmel's problems were ultimately the result of declining ratings. Some conservative commentators also tried to connect the suspension to Disney's broader financial struggles and challenges in the streaming industry, suggesting those issues explained the entire situation. But that explanation became harder and harder to defend as Kimmel's return kept drawing attention and audience engagement remained strong. Week after week, viewers continued tuning in, and the more momentum the show gained, the more difficult it became to claim that the audience had simply moved on.
Creepy, cringy, awkward, that I give people something called the ick. They want you to think that I can't order a simple donut.
Was appointed chairman of the FCC by this former crusader for free speech.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple, just like dominoes, one by one. They'll go down.
That was also in 2022. And I wonder, how did that guy turn into this guy?
Who would you like to see replace Kimmel on late night?
Well, a lot of people, anybody could replace him. The guy had no talent. Kimmel look, he was fired, he had no talent. He's a whack job, but he had no talent. And more importantly,
What made Kimmel's response
What made Kimmel's approach especially effective was the strategy behind it. Instead of leaning on emotional arguments or making dramatic accusations, he focused on facts that people could verify for themselves. He pointed to station groups, audience numbers, timelines, and distribution decisions, giving viewers the chance to compare those details with the rumors circulating online and draw their own conclusions. That made his argument feel more credible because it came across less like a political debate and more like evidence being laid out for everyone to see. The Brooklyn monologue worked so well because Kimmel trusted the facts to do the heavy lifting. There was no shouting, no over-the-top outrage, and no need for exaggerated reactions. He simply organized the information in a way that exposed the contradictions without telling the audience what they had to think. While J.D. Vance continued talking about ratings, stations across the country were already putting Kimmel's show back on their schedules. Viewers didn't need long explanations or flashy graphics to understand what was happening. They heard the jokes, saw the facts behind them, and quickly understood the point Kimmel was making.
How do you assess the legal battles here?
Yeah, I bet all those judges are huge fans of Jimmy Kimmel, by the way, but I think, Vince, that one, we have an appeals process.
Looking back at the entire controversy from beginning to end, the sequence of events is actually pretty straightforward. Jimmy Kimmel was suspended by ABC for 6 days after a monologue that sparked widespread backlash. Donald Trump quickly praised the decision, and later, J.D. Vance appeared on Fox News and argued that the situation showed Kimmel was losing viewers and becoming less relevant. Even after ABC reinstated the show, several major station groups, including Sinclair and Nexstar, kept it off their schedules for an extended period. But as public attention grew and the controversy gained national momentum, the situation began to change. Sinclair eventually reversed its decision. Nexstar followed, and FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr later clarified his comments about the matter. When you look at the events in the order they happened, the timeline tells a clear story of a television controversy that gradually grew into a much bigger debate about ratings, media influence, political pressure, and public perception.
Look, it's just me, Jimmy, the chairman of the FCC, gently suggesting that you gently shut the up.
But you can't say that. That's a violation of free speech.
Oh, yeah, about that. Speech, it ain't free no more.
What? It's not free no more?
Yeah, we're charging by the word now.
You're charging by the word? How much are you charging?
Depends on what you want to say. Like, you want to say something nice about the president's beautiful, thick yellow hair, or how he can do his makeup better than any broad. That's free.
When Jimmy Kimmel finally walked onto the stage in Brooklyn, he didn't waste a second addressing the controversy head-on. He brought up J.D. Vance's comments, pointed out that several stations had already restored his show, and then delivered the now well-known Vice President Maybelline punchline with a smile that instantly had the entire crowd laughing, :
Agree with many of those people on most subjects. Some of the things they say even make me want to throw up. It takes courage for them to speak out against this administration, and they did, and they deserve credit for it. And thanks for telling their followers that our government cannot be allowed to control what we do and do not say on television, and that we have to stand up to it. I've been hearing a lot about what I need to say and do tonight, and the truth is, I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't.
So, what's the biggest takeaway from everything that happened? In many ways, it all comes down to preparation and credibility. J.D. Vance entered the debate with a claim, while Jimmy Kimmel responded with evidence, and that difference goes a long way in explaining why the segment connected so strongly with audiences. The jokes landed because they were built around information viewers could check for themselves. Kimmel didn't rely on dramatic twists, over-the-top accusations, or sensational rhetoric to make his point. Instead, he simply repeated Vance's comments, pointed to the growing number of stations that had restored his show, and let the facts speak for themselves.
That guy walked into your office and told you he was there to start making cuts.
I have friends who met a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, who met the best man at their wedding at Turning Points USA because it was an organization of patriots dedicated to making this country the very...
And that brings us to you, because moments like this usually spark some of the strongest reactions. Whether you thought the Vice President Maybelline joke was the funniest part of the night or felt another punchline landed even better, there's no denying that Kimmel turned a political controversy into one of the most talked about late-night moments in recent memory. If you had a favorite line from the segment, share it in the comments. And if you followed the controversy from the very beginning, watching each station's decision and every public response as the story unfolded, let everyone know which moment stood out to you the most. As always, if you enjoy breaking down the biggest political and media stories as they happen, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned, because whenever public narratives collide with real-world results, the story usually becomes far more interesting than anyone expects.
Chairman of the FCC.
You don't need to know my name, and I am the new chairman of the FCC.
You were appointed FCC chairman by Donald Trump?
Sir Trump, yes. I used to do some work for the man here and there in Atlantic City.
But did I just hear you on the phone threatening Whoopi Goldberg?
No, I would never threaten Miss Goldstein. I was just teaching her a lesson about consequences.
No, well, pardon me for saying so. Maybe you're the wrong guy to talk to, but it seems like the FCC is using mob tactics to suppress free speech.
What the did you just say?
My mother.
We are definitely not driving back to the brunt of the effect of the shutdown. It will be felt right here in New York. To punish you for disliking him, Trump is putting $18 billion worth of New York City infrastructure projects, like the new rail tunnels under the Hudson and the Second Avenue subway project, on hold to make sure the money isn't being used to support DEI. Apparently, they think trans stands for transportation over there, and they want to stop it. This is clearly an abuse of power to punish the city. And New York City infrastructure projects are not supposed to be delayed because Trump wants to strong-arm Democrats into cutting health care. They're supposed to be delayed because they're New York City infrastructure projects.